All right. So before I get started here, just want to make sure we got everybody in and we're all ready to roll. Make sure I got everything kind of staged out. We got kind of a lot to talk about, and I want to kind of breeze through some of it, and then maybe get to planting up a container at the end. All right. So today we're doing contain your enthusiasm, or don't contain your enthusiasm. I always get very enthusiastic when spring hits. We're going to be talking about pots, pottery, different types of ceramics, different types of glaze, all of the different types of containers that you can grow in. And I didn't even collect all of them from around the garden center. There's just so many and so many choices out there and so many different types of materials too. But that's kind of one of the most important things that I want to get to, is all the different types of materials that pots and pottery are made out of these days, and why you might use different ones. So hopefully this information helps, and then if you've got any questions, please feel free to fire away any questions as we go through this. I will try and keep up and answer them all. Good morning, Jan and Brenda. Hello. So, all right. So when spring hits, I kind of immediately think of a couple things. First and foremost is getting outside and working in my yard. But then I always kind of immediately go to, what do I want to do to draw attention to maybe my front door, or something that I want to do enjoyable on my patio. And I ultimately always go to containers. Containers are so much fun. They're so easy. You can change them. You can manipulate them. And they're just so much fun and actually very, very easy to do. And so every year I find myself buying more and more containers, you know, whether they're terracotta or clay or glazed or concrete, plastic. I mean, there's so many different options out there. And so I came and I kind of thought to myself, man, there's so many different materials and so many different types of pottery that we use. What are the benefits and what are the pluses and minuses of them? And really what I came to find is there's more benefits always to all pots. So no matter what you've bought, all of them work very, very well. Yes, I have my favorites, and of course here at the Garden Center we have some of our favorites, and you'll see that in our collections. The biggest collections are in the ones that we believe in the most. But there's a lot of other containers out there too. So hopefully we can get some of that information to you, and you'll learn something new from this webinar. Because every spring season I think, man, what am I going to plant in my terracotta pots? What am I going to plant in my plastic pots? And different ideas too. I mean, I'll even show you an Earthbox today, which is a different type of container. Self-watering planters, orchid pots, the list goes on and on and on. So anyways, let's get started here. We do carry lots and lots of different planters here at the Garden Center. And so I mentioned a couple of them. The first thing I want to do is go through the materials and just kind of get some of the basic information out there about all the materials. And then I can kind of show you a lot of different, options of how to use them, which I think will be beneficial. And then if I have time at the end, I'll plant up something so you can kind of see the kind of process of that, because that's what we're starting to do. And we're going to do more webinars on planting up containers and doing different types of combinations of different types of plants. So good morning to everybody. All right, so the first one I want to talk about is terracotta, is clay. One reason that I love terracotta is it's that classic garden color. It looks really, really nice. It's very functional. It's very easy to use. It's pretty lightweight, which is why I like it. So it's not as lightweight as a plastic pot might be, but it's not as heavy as a ceramic or concrete planter might be. So it's got a good durability to it. I think one of the reasons that a lot of people get scared of using terracotta is for the fact that they can freeze in the winter. So I'll give you a couple quick tips on that. One is if you have soil in here, but let's say you plant an annual. So let's say I plant this petunia right here in this terracotta pot, and I plant this and I grow this in the season. And then as we get to the fall, once we get a hard freeze, this petunia is going to go. So instead of leaving the soil in there, what I like to do is empty out the soil, put it into a compost pile, maybe put it into a plastic pot or something that I can use it for next year if there's still a lot of soil in there. If it's a lot of root system, I usually put it in my compost pile. But then I take it and I can clean it out, wash it out, set it out in the sun, let it dry, and then it's safe to store for the season. And it's easy to move clay pots around when they're empty. Now, if you're growing something in a terracotta pot year-round throughout the winter, then what can I do to protect my clay pot through that season? Well, first and foremost, get it off the ground. So if you have it out in your landscape, if you have it in a mulch bed, in a flower bed, in a vegetable garden, whatever it might be, and you've got it sitting on soil or mulch, then try and get it elevated. And there's a couple different options that you can do. You can move it to a concrete section, like maybe back steps or somewhere in your yard that it won't be sitting on soil, because soil holds moisture. And what clay has is it's porous. So let's talk about the kind of those kind of ideas of a clay pot. Is these have pores, millions and millions of pores on it that allow air and water to pass through the wall of the pot. Now, what that means is moisture can get absorbed into the clay. So if I've got this clay pot sitting on soil, then that moisture can get sucked up into the pot, and then when water freezes, it expands. And that's how we get cracked pots, when water and moisture get into the pores of a clay pot, they freeze, they expand, and that's how you can see. Sometimes it'll shale off. You'll get like sections that'll shale. You might just get a small crack that might not even be noticeable, but they can freeze and expand, and when it expands, you can crack your pot. So put it up on some bricks. That's another great tip. Sometimes I'll just, everybody should have bricks laying around their home. I love always using bricks. It helps elevate them out of the garden, but it also helps with your drainage. So, every pot, most pots, we'll talk about drainage holes here in a little bit, but most pots have a drainage hole, and you want to make sure that this is still draining. So that's the other tip in the winter. Make sure that your pots are still draining well. Also, if you can move it onto a porch or a patio or something that's got an overhang on it, then you can control the watering, and you can say, hey, look, it's about to freeze tonight. Maybe I shouldn't water my pot today. I can water it tomorrow when it warms back up a little bit. And that way you don't have a lot of moisture in your pot, in your soil, in the clay that will freeze and expand and crack. Also, another tip is if you forget and your pot is sitting out in the garden and it's frozen to the ground, then don't go and rip it off the ground. That can break your pot as well. But terracotta is awesome. It's a very classic color, and you can do a lot of things to it. So let's talk about the benefits of growing plants in them. If you've ever grown in terracotta, you probably know this. It can dry out fairly quickly. So I typically will put things like succulents. This is a great example of it. Lots of different succulents in a terracotta pot because they love to be able to dry out a little bit. Clay has pores in it. It's porous. And so air will pass through, which means that it will allow air to get to the root system. That's a very beneficial thing for plants, that air gets into the root system. It's not an end-all be-all. You'll get air through the top and through the bottom, and naturally it's just in there. But clay does allow air to pass, which will dry out your pots typically. But it does allow water to pass through too. So if you're a heavy waterer, terracotta might be a good option for you, because if you water a lot, then the terracotta can actually allow some of that moisture to come out a little bit easier. So if you're a heavy waterer, terracotta might be a good option for you. However, if you don't water as much and you tend to maybe go out of town on the weekends, or you're just kind of forgetful about those types of things, or you're like me and you push your plants a little bit harder than most, then terracotta might not be the best option for you, because terracotta will dry out. Because if the terracotta is dry, it'll absorb the moisture out of the potting soil. However, it can also release moisture too. So if your terracotta is wet and your soil is dry, it can release it back into the soil. If you've ever seen those watering spikes, they're made out of a terracotta spike. And the idea is that the water is sitting in a bottle of some sort, whether it's a wine bottle or another container or vessel for the water. Then what happens is, as that potting soil that the spike is sitting in, as that potting soil dries out, then the clay can dry out. And when the clay dries out, the pores open up and the water can release into the soil. And then when the potting soil is wet, then the clay spike stays wet, and then the pores get tighter and the water can stay in the vessel. So that's how the clay spike works, and that's exactly how a terracotta pot is going to work. So really, really great. I love terracotta because you can group them. They're classic. It works in any kind of decor or setting. Also, you can do a lot of different things to them. So what can we do with a terracotta pot? Well, you can whitewash it, which is very simple. You just take a little bit of paint and some water, and you more water than paint. I think it's about a 1 to 10 parts. So let's say you're using, a couple drops of paint, then you just add 10 drops of water, and you get a very, very light white, and you can whitewash your pots, which is a very cool look. You can also let moss grow on them. I know there's a couple recipes. I didn't look them up. I've never really done the buttermilk thing, but I know you can do buttermilk, and that will help moss grow on a terracotta pot. But what you can also do, and what I find to work pretty well, is just when I'm not using my terracotta pots, just leave them out in a shady kind of wet area. Let them sit on the soil. You might even roll it around in a little bit of soil so they're a little dirty, so it's got something for the moss to cling onto. And I've been really, really successful at that. Shade and moisture is what is going to help the moss grow on terracotta. So it's very easy to do that. You can actually buy some terracotta pots sometimes with moss already kind of built up on them, but it's very easy to do it yourself. I see a couple questions about spray paint, and so yes, spray painting them, and I was going to bring that up next, is you can paint terracotta pots. I know I've had the kids do that for Mother's Day, you know, take a big terracotta pot and paint something on it for your mom for Mother's Day. The kids love to do that. Lots of kid activities and fun for adults, fun for all ages. So you can paint different decorations on it. What I would do is paint it on the outside. Now, what you're ultimately going to be doing is sealing up some of those pores. So yes, if you spray paint it, that's going to be perfectly fine, but then it's not going to be as porous. So if you're using terracotta for the attribute of being porous, for succulents, cacti, things like that, you know, lavender, rosemary that like to kind of dry out, like that arid kind of climate, then I would just leave it terracotta. If you're doing it for decorative purposes, then yes, you can spray paint away. It's not a problem at all. You can spray paint it, you can paint different images on it, and that's why terracotta is so cool. It's also very cost effective. That's one of my major benefits to terracotta, is it's relatively inexpensive. So for example, this is an azalea pot. It's a little bit shorter. You can tell it's kind of a little bit squattier. I got some other examples here that I'll show you in a minute. But $4.99 for this nice 8-inch terracotta pot. I mean, I could plant this petunia in it. I could plant a lot of different things in it. I could plant some herbs. So I could go get, you know, 10 of these pots and plant all the herbs that I like and line them up, and that would be very, very cool looking and very functional. And it's not going to cost me an arm and a leg to get a bunch of terracotta pots. So terracotta is awesome for that reason. It comes in a lot of different shapes and styles. You'll get a little bit more expensive if you get the embossed or emblems or different design patterns on them. But this is a 6-inch terracotta pot, but this is more of what I would call a bell shape. So you can see it's kind of got that beveled edge to it. So it's a little bit different looking than a regular terracotta pot, but also $4.99. So a little bit smaller than this one, not by much, but it's about $4.99. So terracotta is very inexpensive. You can find it pretty much anywhere. So if you're not in our neck of the woods, then I'm sure you can find terracotta pretty much anywhere. What I do like to look for, and most pots tell you, and they all have a little stamp on it, made in Italy. So if your terracotta is made in Italy, pretty much all of these pots pretty much are, yep, made in Italy right there. That's really your best quality terracotta. It's the type of clay, it's the firing process that it goes through that helps these pots be very, very strong and very, very durable if you treat them as such. Now, can these break? Yes. Will they break? Probably over time. They don't particularly age extremely well. I've had some terracotta pots that have lasted me 10, 12, 15 years, but I've had some that break. What do you do if they break? Don't throw it away. Use those pieces. What I like to do is take them, smash them up into some chunks about, you know, silver dollar size, maybe a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit bigger, and use those to fill up the bottom of some of your other pots. We'll talk about that here in a minute. You know, when we've got a plastic pot that we're worried about it tipping over, then you need some weight down on the bottom. And instead of buying a bag of rock, if you've got terracotta pots that are broken, save the pieces. Get a plastic pot. I always save some of my bigger plastic pots, put some soil in it, but I also will save one and just break up all my clay pieces, put them in there. And that's a great way of kind of reusing some of those broken pots. And you can do that with any pot. If you break a concrete planter or a ceramic planter, don't throw away those pieces. You'll use them in your other pots. It helps improve drainage down the bottom, allows that drain hole to not get blocked, and also adds weight to some of your lightweight containers. So hopefully that helps there. I think that's pretty much all that I had on terracotta. Like I said, I want to kind of roll through some of the materials so I can show you all of these different examples that I have here. But plastic would be my next one. So plastic, lots and lots of different types of plastic, obviously. Got a couple examples here. We'll go through this. Now this is a black nursery pot. Whoop. I dropped it. So lightweight that I accidentally threw it across the room. All right, so plastic pots are very, very functional. This is what growers grow in. So this is a nursery pot right here. We do sell some of these at our year-round locations. Really more functional. So I use these like a lot of times when I've planted a tree or a shrub or something. I always save some of the larger ones. great for trash collection around the yard, great for something if I want to pot something that I'm not quite sure where I'm going to plant it. Let's say I've got an old shrub. I grow a lot of things in containers, so I've got Japanese maples and different viburnums and different things that I've planted or don't know where I'm going to plant, but I had to have it. And so I grow these things in plastic pots, or I might be growing them in a ceramic pot, but then I want to use that ceramic pot for something else, something more decorative. So then I want to plant into this to help me move it if I'm moving from one home to another, or if I'm giving away plants. These are great. They're very functional. If you're looking for a very cost-effective way to maybe grow a tomato or a pepper or something, this is a great option. These are $6.99 for a 7-gallon pot. Very, very functional and very easy to grow. Now, we also carry lots of other plastic pots, and I'll get more into all of these different types here in a minute. I just want to show you the two main types first of the plastic pots that you'll find before I come back to all the different styles and shapes that we carry. But this is just a nicer looking terracotta plastic pot. So this is the terracotta color with a plastic. And so you can get saucers that match these. They're very nice looking. So it gives you that nice look, that terracotta look, that clay look, but it's plastic and it's lightweight. And again, very cost effective. Now, what are the benefits of growing in plastic pots? Why do growers grow in plastic pots? Why do they all grow in these pots? Well, one reason is the black helps absorb heat, which means the soil will warm up more. And when the soil warms up more, the plant can grow more. Now, the downfall of that is in our extremely summer, our extreme hot periods during the summer, these can really heat up and dry out faster. However, plastic does not have pores, is not porous. That's why you have water in your plastic bottles, because it won't allow water to get through, or air. Now, that is a downfall in plants. However, if you don't water as much, plastic is a good option because plastic will hold more moisture in. So if you're having issues with terracotta or clay and you're struggling keeping your plants watered enough, that's because it's porous. It's allowing moisture and air to go through. Plastic is not going to allow that. So for us people out there that don't water as much, this might be a good option for you because plastic does help keep the root ball, the soil inside your container, moist for a longer period. However, it doesn't allow air to pass through, and that's unfortunate. However, air can still get in through the top of the surface, and as long as you're using a good potting soil, we'll talk about that here in a little bit, potting soils are designed to have pockets of air in it and not get thick or muddy over time. So use potting soil whenever you use anything in a container. Always make sure it's a good potting soil. Again, I'll get back into that in a minute here. But plastic is a great option. It's also lightweight, as you saw when I threw it across the room. So plastic is very, very lightweight, which makes it easy if you plan on moving your plants around some. So let's say you plan on moving it with the sun a little bit. Maybe you're growing herbs in it and you want to give them a little bit of shade in the summer months when it's really, really hot out there. You think of like the basils and the cilantros that tend to flower. Plastic might be a good option because then you can go move it to a little bit of a shadier spot. You still want to give it sun, but it does allow you the ability to move it around some. I always talk about, when people talk about Daphne is a tricky plant to grow. I love Daphne. That fragrance is absolutely amazing. It likes really, really good drainage. Root rot is its main issue. So I grow Daphne in a container. Why? Because I can bring it up to the door when it's blooming, so I can get that nice fragrance, but I can also put it back in the yard when it's kind of done and just enjoy it there. But I grow it in a plastic pot because it's easy to move. It's lightweight. Now, the downfall of a plastic container is it's lightweight. And so if you're growing a taller plant in it, like let's say you're going to put a palm in a plastic pot, then the issue is if you've got something top heavy in a plastic pot, it can blow over. If you've ever come to the garden center here, if you ever worked in a garden center like I have for years, and you have a tall plant in a plastic pot, when we have heavy windstorms and we have a lot of wind in this area, then a lot of those plants will fall down. Now, the good news is plastic doesn't break. So can it become brittle over time? Yes, for sure. As it gets older, as it gets sun-beaten, then yes, they can become brittle and then they can eventually break. But they're very, very durable, but they are lightweight. So, as I mentioned earlier, rock or your pieces of your clay pots or your ceramic pots that maybe have broken over the years, use something heavy down in the bottom to help create a bit of a stronger, heavier base that will help kind of keep that plant upright. However, I will say if you're growing a palm or something taller, Japanese maple, in a plastic pot, you're always going to deal with issues of them blowing over. Now, I do want to bring up one more thing before I move on to the next one is plastic pots remember what I said, are not porous. So don't plant a plastic pot in the ground. And we don't want to plant any pot in the ground. So if you're growing, so great example is this petunia. You want to take this out of the pot and plant it in the ground. So whenever we're planting in the ground, we don't want to plant our plastic pots in there as well. And we might be thinking, oh, that'll be easy for me to just go and rip it out. Here's the problem, is there's small drain holes on the bottom of each plastic pot. And if that drain hole gets clogged up, then what you're going to do is create a system here that's going to hold way too much moisture, and then you're going to get a lot of moisture build up, and it's going to become a boggy kind of condition, almost like a swamp. And that will actually hurt the plant more than it will help, even if you're planning on ripping it out of the ground here in the next few years. Now, what I have seen some people do is they'll take a slightly, bigger plastic pot. I wouldn't go this big, obviously, but a slightly bigger pot, and then they can just slip their plastic pot into it. Still same situation. When these drain holes get clogged in the soil, so if we put this down in our ground, in our soil, these drain holes are going to get clogged and you're still going to collect moisture. So even if you take your plastic pot, slip it in there, then that is still going to fill up with water. Your slip-in pot is still going to fill up with water. So I don't recommend ever putting a plastic pot into the soil. I always recommend taking your plant out of your pot and going straight into the ground. So hopefully that helps with that. All right, let's move on to the next type of material that you're going to see a lot of, and that's our glazed pot. So now these, of course, are our favorite. They're the best out there. Yes, they're going to be on the more expensive side. However, you're going to get every different type of color out there. There's black, white, gold, green, blue, beige, red. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's lots of different patterns too, so I don't know if you can quite see that. I know we got a little glare. There you go. You can see there's a little pattern in this one. So you can get so many different looks with a glazed container. Terracotta is terracotta. I mean, that's the color. So clay is going to be terracotta color. Sometimes you'll find some gray ones or some whitewashed, or you can get the moss, or you can paint them, which makes them really, really beneficial and very easy to use. But ceramics are going to be your value. They're going to last a long, long time. So what is a ceramic pot? Well, ceramic pots are basically a clay terracotta pot, a clay pot that has been fired slowly to do basically this. So you're basically got this first. Then they use a ceramic glaze to basically kind of solidify the pot and make it a lot stronger. Now, it does block the pores. So as we mentioned about, painting a terracotta or clay pot, you're going to block those pores. So it's not a breathable container. But the good news is it's going to hold some moisture in. So it'll hold some more moisture in. However, with the breathable side, use a good potting soil. That's all you got to do is use a good potting soil. That'll allow air to get into your soil. So ceramic pots are great for that. I find them to be very, very durable too. You can find lots and lots of different types of of glazed containers out there. There's so many different styles. Some like this that have a saucer attached. I'm going to go through all the different styles out there. But you can get so many different looks. I mean, look at that pretty pattern on there. Really, really cool. So you can match any kind of decor, any kind of look, and your container can be part of the show of if you're planting up a combination of different plants. They also do great when you pair them and group them together. You're going to see that here in a little bit when I pull some more out and show you how you can group them on your porch or patio. But ceramic are really, really great because they're very, very durable. These stand up to the winter a lot better as well. So if you're planning on leaving a container outside year-round and you're planning on growing in something in it year-round, then ceramic is my favorite option. It's also heavier. So now that could be a downfall. If you're planning on moving your container a lot, I wouldn't use a ceramic. But if you're planning on putting it on a spot and leaving it there for a while, then ceramic's a great option. I still recommend getting it off the ground soil. So if you're putting this on a porch or a patio, you're going to be perfectly fine. If you're using it out in your landscape, in your flower beds, in a vegetable garden, whatever it might be, then you do want to get it up off the soil, especially in the winter. You don't have to do it so much in the summer, but I like to go ahead and set it in its spot. And I like to use bricks. Bricks are one of my favorite ways to do that. You can take 4 bricks, you can take 2 bricks, you can make a little pad basically. All you're doing is making a little patio for it. That'll allow the moisture to not get up into the bottom. Because all ceramic pots, most of them will have a little glaze on the bottom, but like this one you can see there's a rim right here that will still allow moisture to get inside. So if moisture gets inside, it freezes, then it can still crack. Now, it's not as susceptible to it as a clay pot because clay can absorb moisture through the air, through the soil, when it rains, all of those things. But if you get this up off the ground, then you're going to have a long, long life with these ceramic pots. I've had some that I've had since I started working here at the garden center. For 15, 17 years, I've had the same ceramic pots. And of course, I buy more and more each year. I see a question that says, what is the cost on this one? So this one is $39.99. So a little bit more expensive, obviously, but the longevity. You know, it's what we talk about with like LED lights. You know, you're going to spend a little bit more, but you're never going to replace that bulb for many, many years. Whereas a ceramic pot is the same thing. Now you can still get long lives out of terracotta and a long life out of plastic. But if you want that look, that rich look, that very high-end kind of classy look, then ceramic is the best, and I think it's the most longevity. And I think it gives you the best of both worlds. You know, we talked about plastic not being porous, so for us that maybe don't water as much, plastic might be a good option, but ceramic is a good option. We talked about, you know, the look of terracotta or clay being really cool looking and that garden kind of look, but this, you can get so many different looks and you can match all your decor. So not only are they beautiful, they're functional, and they're very, very durable, and they're going to last you a long time. So if you ever come to our garden center, you're going to see this is a majority of the pots that we carry are ceramic pots because there's so many different styles to them. So I really, really love glazed or ceramic pottery. It lasts a long time, whether you're using it inside or out. And we're going to go over all the different styles here in a minute. I just want to talk about the materials first. So just talking about the materials. All right, so coco liners are another one. So you'll see coco liners used a lot in hanging baskets. And why is that? And why is coco liner so good? Well, we love coco liners here because it helps absorb some moisture. It's also a byproduct of coconuts. You know, coconuts are used a lot for the meat and for the juice out of a coconut, the coconut water, basically. You'll see a lot of that these days. But cocoa husks, this coco liner comes from the cocoa husk, and that's just a byproduct. So those were just getting thrown away in the past, but we've used them in the garden industry. They're biodegradable, they're environmentally friendly. Yes, do they wear down over time? For sure. But what I would do is recommend that you use it to amend your soil. You can use this to amend potting soil. People are looking for cocoa core now to amend their soil because it adds a fluffiness to your soil. It helps absorb some moisture. It's very similar to peat moss, but this is a great option, and it's a really, really cool look. I just love that look, whether you're using it in a hanging basket or you're using it in a window box. Really, really nice look. So coco liners are a great option. It's porous, so it allows moisture to go in and out, allows air to go in and out, so that's a good benefit of it to it. It's also lightweight, so it's not super, super heavy. Now this is in a wrought iron basket, which adds a little bit of weight, but not much. I mean, this is probably a total of 5 pounds. So that makes it easy to hang on a deck or a porch or a patio or next to a window. So these make great options, and then same with the hanging basket as well. We've got this great, you know, hanging basket. It really adds an upscale look to your hanging basket. Really easy to use. Get this chain straight so you can see kind of what it looks like. But really, really nice look for a hanging basket. And what I like to do, one of my little tricks that we'll do in a future webinar is how to use hanging baskets, is just take the hanging basket like this one, pop the hook off, drop it down in your coco line basket. You don't even need to plant it and you're good to go. Or you can plant it and you get the benefits. But coco liner is an awesome one. Obviously, if you have lots of birds, they love to kind of pick at it, but that's not too bad. It's not going to hurt the coco liner at all. And it's just a great option as well. A lot of these cost different things. This is a 12-inch hanging basket. It's $24.99, and then each year you can just buy the liner, which is relatively inexpensive, $6.99 for a liner to pop in there if you need to each year. I know a lot of people that get many years out of them. A lot of people, especially if you're growing like a fern or a annual combination of you know, in your hanging baskets, then when you're done, you rip it out, you throw it away because the frost hit it and it's killed it, and then you can just take this, clean it out, store it, let it dry, store it inside your garage, and use it again next year. But over time, they will fall apart. But when they do, you can add it to your soil. It's a great soil amendment. So coco liners are a great option. There's also sphagnum moss. So sphagnum moss is another option. These can be used to line baskets, same as this. This is a long fiber sphagnum moss. And what that means is you're going to take this, get it moist, and you can mold it and mesh it into a open weaved basket like this. So I could take this sphagnum moss, get it nice and wet, and I can use it basically when this is done, and I can just use it to push in there and it'll form that kind of same. Now the problem with sphagnum moss, typically, great soil amendment, great for decorative coverings on the top of your soil, lots and lots of uses for sphagnum moss. A lot of people use it in their potting soil, but for a hanging basket, it tends to dry out a little bit faster, surprisingly. It holds a lot of moisture, but not as good as the coco liner does. So I definitely recommend the coco liner, but this is another option, a different look. It's also cool because you can separate it and plant things in it. So for example, and you can do this with a coco liner as well, is if I wanted to make this into like a strawberry hanging basket, I could plant all my strawberries in the top, and then as we get little shoots and little babies coming out of it, I can cut an X in this and plant my strawberry in there. So then you can fill it out and you can get lots and lots of different plants growing all around this thing and all throughout the bottom as well. So you got lots and lots of options of growing in a coco liner or sphagnum moss. Just another option for you. Now, I didn't bring a lot of these other options in here because I don't sell a whole lot. I do have some concrete planters. So this is a concrete planter. Now this one's got a design in it, if you can see that. But concrete planters are like statuary. They're going to age and get stronger with age. So that's why I always tell people whenever you're designing a flower bed or anything and you can add, a concrete bird bath or a piece of statuary or even a fountain, they get stronger with age. Concrete gets stronger. And so the value there is that it's going to last a long time. And so concrete planters are going to last a very, very long time. Now, the downfall of concrete is it's very, very heavy, even more heavy than a ceramic pot. So you better choose wisely where you're putting that concrete planter and know that it's probably going to sit there for a while. Now again, we don't sell a whole ton of concrete planters, but if you're out there looking for planters, concrete is an option, and concrete is very heavy, but it's a good option because it gets stronger with age. Just kind of similar to ceramic pots. Ceramic pots I find get better with age. I'm not going to say that they necessarily get stronger. It's not the characteristics of it, but concrete will get stronger with age. So it's a good option. Now there's also metal and wood planters out there. Now wood, if you're building a wood planter, just be careful that you're not using pressure treated or anything that's been treated with a chemical. However, new pressure treated wood typically doesn't have all those chemicals in there. Using pallet wood, be careful. You never know where that pallet came from. I know we had a craze probably about, I think it's probably been 7 or 8 years now. That we use pallets to plant things in, to do vertical gardens in. It was a great option. We ended up building our own pallets because you never know what was being transported on that pallet. So if you have a pallet that you're planning on planting in, make sure that you can maybe hopefully track down what was actually transported on that pallet, because if it was some sort of chemical, let's say it was something like antifreeze that was being transported on a pallet, you just never know, and pallets are reused multiple times. So I'm not saying don't use pallets. Pallets are cool looking and they've got some functionality. Just make sure that if you do use a pallet and you're not quite sure where it's come from, what I would do is let it sit out in the weather for probably about 4 to 6 months. Let it really get aged a little bit. You might even spray it down with a little bit of bleach to kind of clean it up. But that would be my caution on wood. And wood, of course, is going to, if it sits in moisture, which your potting soil is going to stay moist, then it can age fairly quickly as well. So if you're just using like a pine or something, it's going to age much faster. Now, if you use something like a cedar, cedar is a very long-lasting wood. That's why we use it for like our raised beds. So wood is not a bad option. It's just make sure that it's not treated with something, and make sure that it's something that's going to have some longevity, because you're going to be sitting moisture around it. I always think of wine barrels. So wine barrels are made out of oak. Oak is a very long-lasting wood. That would be a good option. Wine barrels also are fired on the inside, so or treated different ways to contain a edible product like wine or whiskey. So you're going to find those wine or whiskey barrels that are going to be perfectly fine. Now, a lot of people said, what about the whiskey or the wine, kind of being in that wood a little bit? Not going to hurt the plant. I've never had any issues with that. And again, if you're worried about it, then let it sit out in Mother Nature for about 4 to 6 months. And let it age properly. Now, whiskey barrels are kind of an older fashioned look. You probably don't see them as much, but if that's something that you wanted, we do carry some. We don't carry a whole lot, but we do carry some. What we have found is with whiskey barrels, and if you've ever had a whiskey barrel, you'll know this, that you need to keep it somewhat moist. So you need to plant it up. Most whiskey barrels will hold water. So a lot of times when you find a whiskey barrel at a retail store, it'll usually be sit out in a field with water still in it, because that's what keeps the wood expanded and keeps it tight. If you let a whiskey barrel dry out without any wood or without any water or without any soil in it, then that wood contracts a little bit. It becomes smaller and it starts to fall apart. So you always want to keep your whiskey barrels full of soil or full of water if you're not using them, and that keeps the wood expanded and keeps that whiskey barrel together. However, great option as well. So kind of the point of that, and then of course, well, I forgot one more material, metal. So metal is, you're seeing more and more. We carry some, and I'll talk about these in a little bit, but I don't know if you can hear that. But that's metal, and metal is a great option as well. It's lightweight, it's durable, it lasts for a very long time. Now, most metals are going to rust, and what are we doing with metals? Or what are we doing with a metal container is we're watering nearby it, right? I'm going to show you how these are used here at the garden center. I don't typically plant straight into a metal container unless I know where that metal has come from. I know we used to carry some metal planters in the past that were parts of cars, I believe, or maybe it was, I can't remember 100% where it came from, but I think it was from like door frames or something like that from cars, or maybe it was wheel frames. But there's a lot of different types of metals out there. Just be careful because metals can release that metal residue into the soil. So if you're growing a vegetable or an edible or a strawberry, lettuce, herbs, anything that you might be eating, I probably wouldn't grow it in a metal container. I'm a little bit more careful. Now, when I'm growing some sort of ornamental plant, I might be a little bit more cautious of that. I might be a little bit or less cautious of what I'm planting in, because typically you're not going to have a longevity. Now, if I'm growing like a Japanese maple that I might grow in a container for 10, 15, 20 years, then I'm a little bit more cautious. I want a strong container. I want it to look good, and I want it to be functional. I don't want it to be releasing anything into that plant, into that soil that can harm it, which is why I kind of always resort back to ceramic. It's still my #1 favorite. So those are kind of all the materials that you're typically going to find. I'm sure there's other ones out there. There's a lot of different options, but those are some of our favorites. So we've got clay, terracotta, clay. Also, we've got plastic, glazed or ceramic pottery, coco liners, which we mentioned, also sphagnum moss liner, which is not a bad option, concrete, metal, and wood. So we carry all different types of different containers here. Now let's get into a little bit more of the different types of containers and different looks and different specific reasons that we're growing in them. So I kind of brought a bunch of examples. I'm going to show you a bunch. And I guess the last material I didn't show you, which was going to be the first little pot that I was going to show, is baskets. Baskets are becoming very, very popular. So baskets are a good option. Now, baskets will break down pretty quickly. I didn't bring some of the big ones. We got some bigger ones too. Very, very popular in your interior design and decor. What you're going to find with most of your basket planters, if I can get this out, is a plastic liner. So this plastic liner is designed to keep the moisture away from the basket so the basket doesn't wear down over time. Now, what I use these for is a slip-in. So what I'll do is I'll take my plant that I want to grow in it, and I just slip it in like that, right? So that's a very, very easy option is, whenever you're using for inside containers. That's what I'm going to talk about next, is indoor containers have lots and lots of different uses. But this is a great option, and most of your baskets, what you don't want to do is plant in like a trash bag. I've seen that happen before. Somebody finds a basket at a decor store or something, an interior design store, let's say like a Home Goods or something. They find the basket and they want to create a plastic liner. Trash bag is an option, just don't plant it into the trash bag. So trash bags, if you're going to put soil in there, there's nowhere for the water to go. We're going to talk about drainage here as we kind of get going. But you don't want to plant straight into that. Now, you can use the trash bag as your liner to protect your basket, but then you want to keep your plant in a plastic pot to just slip in there. And basically all this has become is a pot cover, right? Maybe even a little bit of a saucer. So as we water our plant, if we water directly in here, the water will collect in the plastic pot, the plastic liner, and then I can take this and dump it out into the sink so that I don't have excess moisture around my plant roots, and I can drop it back in. So it can act as a saucer as well. I think I saw a question about what about pit moss instead of peat moss, since peat moss is endangered in the wild. So yes, peat moss, it comes from bogs in Canada. Now there's lots and lots of bogs. It is a renewable resource, but it is a very slow renewable resource. And that's why coco coir is becoming so popular. Pit moss is another option. I believe that's a recycled newspaper. I don't carry it yet, but it's something that we're looking into in the future. but pit moss is not a bad one. I think it's a recycled paper product that has the same kind of qualities and characteristics of a peat moss or a sphagnum moss. The benefit of moss and sphagnum moss is a little bit heavier than the peat moss, holds a little bit more moisture. So if you're working in those dry areas, if you're looking for a little bit more fluffiness, then that's why peat moss is still kind of the tried and true. Now we use it as an amendment. I don't carry peat-based soils. Peat-based soils use a lot of peat moss, and that really can really harm the livelihood or the likelihood of that being regenerated. But yes, you are correct. Pit moss is another great option, and it acts very similar to peat moss. But coco coir is another great option too, because coconuts are a renewable resource, has a very similar characteristic, and you're going to see more coco coir wind up in potting soils over time for sure. So great question. So whiskey barrel palette suggestion. I love that. Yeah. So we were just mentioning some other things there. So yes. So pit moss, great option, great thought there. But coco coir you're going to see being used even more probably than pit moss. Pit moss, I believe, when I looked into it, because I do some of the buying, when I looked into it, was a little bit pricey when it first came out. So hopefully the prices come down a little bit. As any kind of new thing is, can be a little expensive at the beginning. But peat moss, we are using a lot of, and it is a slow renewable resource. It is going to take many, many years to get, I think it's somewhere around 100 years to really get that to refurbish. But they're doing it soundly, and where we get our peat moss from, they are allowing bogs to replenish before they go back and harvest. So they are harvesting from bogs and then letting the other ones replenish over time. So hopefully it is an actual renewable resource, and we're not, hurting Mother Nature to get a resource that we need out of it. All right. So now I want to talk about all the different types of different containers and specific containers. So for example, one option is orchid pots. Why are orchid pots? And I meant to grab an orchid and I just forgot to grab an orchid. But orchid pots have holes in the side, right? So you're going to see all these holes. Why do orchid pots have holes in them? Well, orchid pots have holes because orchids, for the most part, grow in trees. Here's a clay orchid container. It's got the holes cut out. And orchids grow in trees, which means they're used to having their roots out in the air, and they get a lot of moisture out of the air, they get nutrients out of the air, but also they don't like their root system to be too confined, which is why we plant a majority of our orchids in a orchid bark. Orchid bark is very, very porous, very open, and allows a lot of air to get through. And what you'll find is with an orchid pot, the roots will start to grow out of these holes, and that is completely natural. You see a lot of times orchids have roots growing over the top of the pot. That is very natural as well. That's what they're designed to do. They have their roots naturally out in the air, and of course attached into the bark as well of a tree when they're growing up in a tree. And then when that rain, typically in the rainforest, gets into the bark and the bark absorbs some of that moisture, and the orchids can get the water that they need. So orchid pots are a specific pot that you might see. Now you could also take this pot and grow anything in it. You might just put a liner in there like the sphagnum moss or a coco coir in there. So orchid pots are a specific pot that you're going to see. You're also going to see self-watering pots. So this is a self-watering pot. It's a lot of times used for African violets because African violets don't like moisture on their leaves, and you typically want to keep somehow you want to water the soil only with an African violet. But a lot of plants would grow perfectly fine in this. Again, same idea as the clay. Same idea as a watering spike that you might use. This is a container, a vessel that the moisture is going to sit in, the water is going to sit in. You drop that top back in there. The clay will absorb the water out of this reservoir and put it into the potting soil when it dries out. So the pores open up, the water gets in, and then it's pushed into the soil. So self-watering containers are another option. Let's see, I also have, this is kind of a cool one. Now these are really, really nice, very, very high end. I'm not going to try and pronounce this name because I'll probably butcher it, but I think it's Lechuza, Lechuza. Now these are really cool containers. So this one has a reservoir built into the bottom. It's also got a little spike that you put up in the top. So it's got this little measuring tube that will tell you how much water is in the bottom. And then it's got these handles. So you pull up the handles and you can pull your pot out. I'm not going to take this all apart. I just want to show that there's a lot of options out there. And this is a really kind of modern style, very glossy white container, and it's got the reservoir built in. So if you're somebody that maybe has a vacation home or a summer home or something like that, a rental property that you want to grow a container in, especially for indoor plants, it's a great option. Then this would be a good option because you can put a lot of water in. This actually holds 3 liters, which is 0.8 US gallons. So you can put a lot of water in this and it can be in there for a long time. And it works by a wicking system. So basically what happens is the moisture sits in the reservoir. There's a wick down in the bottom. As that soil dries out, it wicks the moisture into the soil, and it's kind of a renewable source of water. And so if you're looking for a water-saving container, this is a great option. We have a good selection here at the Independence store as well as our Great Neck stores. They're really, really nice. They're high-end. So $99 for this, but it's very, very well made. It's going to last a long time. And if we're going to do a water-saving container or a self-watering container, we want to make sure it's going to work and be the best, and this is a great option. Now, in that same vein, let me show you this Earthbox Planter. So, if you've ever tried to grow vegetables and you've never been successful and you want to be successful and you want something easy, this is a great option. It's the same idea. So this has a reservoir down on the bottom. Now this is specifically designed to grow vegetables and herbs and any kind of vegetable that you want to grow, but you can also grow flowers in it. So if you want to grow flowers and you like the size and the shape of it, it's a great option. It's plastic, so it's going to hold moisture. And the idea behind this is it's a kit. You get everything that you need other than the soil and the plants. So all you got to do is buy soil, buy plants, and you're ready to roll. Comes with the fertilizer, comes with dolomitic lime, so that your pH is always right, and it's got calcium that tomatoes and peppers and squash need. But this is a great option for you. What it basically does is this mesh down here, you can see that kind of plastic mesh down on the bottom. Then you put your tube in over here that comes with it. It comes with a cover as well. And the idea is with a self-watering container like this is it keeps the fertilizer and the nutrients in the soil, right? So we've got a pot. It's got a hole in it. We're growing a tomato in this pot. We fertilize it on the top. The nutrients wash down over the root system, and then they go out, right? So they're gone eventually. And that is the downfall of a container like this. Not to say that you can't grow in. We've been growing in containers like that for years and years. And so if you're looking for an option to grow a container, that's a good option because you're going to be feeding your plants anyways. But this is one where you basically fill it with soil, you put in a couple different layers of the lime and the fertilizer, you plant your plants, you cover the top so that no water gets into it, and then when you water the tube, the water goes down into the bottom, the root system goes down to the water, and the nutrients stay in the soil because the moisture's coming up and it's not going down, and so the gravity is not pulling the nutrients out. How do you water the orchid in the orchid pot? Is it in a liner to contain the bark soil? Never seen this type of pot. So yes, so how to water in that? That's a great question. Joanna, I think is your name. Yeah, so Joanna, great question. A lot of people do struggle with watering orchids, and a lot of people resort to the ice cube method, and I don't love the ice cube method. The idea behind the ice cube method is you put ice cubes on top, it slowly thaws and melts, and then it slowly works moisture into the bark. What I prefer to do is give it a good soaking. And that might mean taking it outside and using a hose when we've got warmer weather. It might mean taking it to the sink, plugging up the sink and just soaking it in some water. What you want to do is get that bark to absorb the moisture. So yes, when you water with a watering can with this pot, water will come out. And I'm not saying you have to grow orchids in this pot. It's just an option. And they're designed to allow a lot of air and allow the root system to dry out a little bit. So not that you have to use this pot, it's just designed specifically for an orchid. But when I water those, what I typically do is soak it. So I'll usually get either a bucket of water, I love to collect rainwater if possible, and then I can just drop it down in the bucket of water, let it sit there for about 5 minutes. That allows the bark to absorb all of that water, and then I can take it back out, let it sit, let it dry a little bit, and then I can put it back to where, back into its spot that I'm keeping it in. But back to the Earthbox, that's a very simple system, keeps the nutrients right in the soil. It's another self-watering style of container. Plastic, non-porous, but a great option. It's a complete kit for you. So just trying to show you as many options as we have. All right, what else do we have? So we've got Let's go into the houseplant side of it, because there's lots and lots of containers. People are growing indoor plants so much these days. So I want to show the options here. Pretty much all of your smaller indoor ceramic planters, mostly are going to be ceramic. Now you can get some plastic, you can get some metal. I'm going to show you some of those here in a minute. You can even get some that are like bark. So lots and lots of different styles to match any kind of decor. But this is a very common style. I'm going to show you the two most common styles first. This is a very common one, which is a saucer built in. It's got a hole on the side. Yep, so it's got a hole right over here. It's a little small hole. So when you water it, the moisture will go into the saucer and that'll protect your furniture, right? So if you're setting this on a table and you water it, then the moisture is not going to get all over your table. Now, what I typically still do is take them to the sink, if I can, if it's small enough like this, take it to the sink, water it, because sometimes you'll even see, if you've ever used one of these, that the moisture will fill up in the saucer and spill over the sides. But this is a great option. It's a self-contained kind of system. There's also ceramic containers that have no holes in it. There's no drainage hole in this. Now you could take a mason bit, and I wouldn't recommend it because you could crack your planter, but you could drill a hole in this if you really wanted to. But these are designed for specifically this, to slip a plant into, right? So it looks like it's planted, looks really, really nice. Most of them are designed as a 6-inch or 4-inch, maybe even an 8-inch to hold slightly larger plants. But this is the idea. Now, I grow almost all of my indoor plants in plastic pots, and then I just slip them into my containers. It helps when I go to water them. I can take them out. I can go water them really, really well. I can slip them back in. What this is designed to do is just be a pot cover, basically, a cachet pot. So basically, it's designed to make it look ornamental, make it look decorative, great for your tabletop settings in your office, anywhere around your home. But it also can act as a saucer as well. So if you do water in here, what I recommend is after that water has had a chance to absorb into the soil, take your plant out, go dump out the water, and then put your plant back in. We don't want our plants sitting in a bunch of water, which is why I also brought a saucer. So if you find a pot, let's see, like maybe you want to grow in a terracotta pot inside your home, then you can put it on a saucer, because when you water this, the saucer will protect your furniture. Even if you water this in a sink and let it sit for a while, I still recommend putting it on a saucer if you're using it on your hardwood floors, a carpet, anywhere around your home. You don't want water seeping out of your planter, and it can over time. So always use a saucer if it's not built in and you've got a drainage hole in your pot. So if you got a drainage hole and you don't have a saucer built into it and you want to use that container like a ceramic pot, maybe I want a nice big ceramic pot for my floor plant, for my palm or my fiddle leaf fig or whatever I might be growing in my house, but it doesn't come with a saucer because most of them don't. Most of them are designed for outside use, but you want to use it inside? Just get a saucer. And I love these clear plastic saucers. They disappear. You can't even really see them. It's a great option. But regardless, always try and empty these out. Another tip for some of your larger indoor plants, like if you're growing a big floor plant and you've got a big ceramic pot and you've got a saucer underneath and you can't pick it up, right? You can't get that pot, move it, take the saucer, dump out the excess water. What you can use is a turkey baster. They work great. Go in there, sucks out the extra moisture in your saucer, and then that way your roots aren't sitting in moisture. Because what happens is if this saucer fills up with a lot of water and then the root system might be coming out of the pot, but also that soil will dry out, it'll suck up the moisture, and then sometimes your indoor plants can stay wet too long. So saucers are designed to protect your furniture, your floors. They're not designed to hold moisture around a pot and around the root system of a plant. Imagine standing in a tub for days and days. Your feet would rot off. It's the same thing with plants. It's called root rot, and we don't want to encourage that. So always empty out your saucers if you can. It really will improve the life of your plants, especially indoors. Now outside, we've got wind, we've got evaporation, so that moisture is going to go away much faster. But even outside, I don't use saucers that often unless I'm trying to protect something. So if I got it on my front porch or my patio and I don't mind getting a little bit of water because it's going to get rained on anyways, then I just let the drain hole be. Now, if I'm worried that maybe I'm going to block that drain hole, I might resort to a saucer. But saucers are designed to protect things. They're not designed to hold moisture around your plants. That's not an ideal situation. Turkey baster is a great option for you. So thank you, Wendy. So yeah, I use turkey basters a lot for watering around my home, especially if I'm watering specific plants. Sometimes I'll have a combination of plants. Like, let's say, if this were a succulent and this were something else, and I want to water just specifically this plant in this combination. Now these are all succulents, so they all want the same watering requirements. And whenever I do planters, I try and keep all the same watering requirements, but sometimes I want a different pairing and I know one plant doesn't like as much moisture, I need to let it dry out. I'll take my turkey baster and just water right in this direct area around this plant, which does help sometimes. Also great for terrariums too. So love my turkey baster, love to use my turkey baster in my gardening. All right, so indoor pots, those are your options. The other options, and I want to show you a couple different styles here, is pots with feet. These are becoming very, very popular these days. You see them a lot in decorative magazines where you're using these to match your home decor. This is a great option. I loved this one. I just wanted to grab this because it's a different shape. What's also cool about this pot is it's got, sometimes you'll find this, a little plastic kind of cork down in the drain hole. So you can see that. That just came out of that drain hole. So I can open this up and actually plant into this container if I want to. Or if I don't want it, I want it to act as a saucer, I can plug it back up. And you could do this with like plumber's putty or even cutting down a wine cork or something to cork the hole in a pot that you want to grow as a cachet pot. And then I can take my snake plant and drop it in there, and it's acting as a saucer because I've clogged that drain hole basically. But if I want it and I want to plant it in there, then what I can do is just uncork it, and then I can plant in there, and then I'll be back to using my saucer to protect my furniture and floors. So really cool pot. I just love the design of this, the look of it. It's got this really cool kind of concrete-y feel. And pots are made out of a lot of different materials too, like concrete and fiberglass and different types of things to make different planters lightweight. We have found them to be fairly pricey right now, but we hope that the price will go down on those in the future. All right, what else do I have? Oh, pot feet. You know, you can always use pot feet to raise your planters up outside. So I forgot to mention that when I was talking about the bricks outside. Pot feet work as well. So basically you just put these pot feet. I usually like to do at least 3 or 4. You put your pot feet around and you can put your pot right on top of that, and that'll keep the drain hole nice and not in contact with the ground. Now for indoor planters, I mentioned this metal. Now I'm going to use this really as a drop-in option. So this is very, very popular right now, hanging your indoor plants. Let me see if I can get this straight. So this is a great option. I still use this as a cachet pot or a pot cover. So all I'm going to do is just drop my plant down in here and then hang it up. And then when I go to water it, I'm going to take the plant out, water it in the sink, and then bring it back when it has a chance to dry out a little bit, and then I can put it back in my metal planter. So that should keep the metal planter going for a much longer time. Could it rust? Yes. There's a lot, very rarely are you going to get an aluminum pot. Aluminum doesn't rust, but aluminum also releases aluminum into the soil, and that can actually hurt the plant over time. So you're usually just going to get a basic metal, which can rust. Now these are all painted to hopefully prevent that with like a Rust-Oleum kind of rust preventer paint, but this is kind of a decorative planter. But I'm using this just exclusively, not going to plant in this, I'm just going to slip my plastic pot in there. Now we carry plastic pots, and that's why I say save plastic pots, because if I need to upgrade my snake plant into a larger pot and I don't want to plant it, I'm going to continue to use it as a slip-in. I'm going to buy a bigger ceramic pot, and then I'm going to get a reusable plastic grower pot, basically. I'm going to plant it in the grower pot, I'm going to slip it back in, and that's how you can kind of upgrade your plants over time. All right, what else do I got? Here's a cool little planter right here. It's a concrete planter. It's got this design on it. I don't know if you can quite see that design because we got the glare, but it's got this really cool ginkgo leaf design in it. We've got so many different types of pots. No hole in the bottom, so it's used as a pot cover. So I can just slip my plant in there, really, really decorative plant. So I can change this plant out. Maybe it's in my office, my home office these days, and I can just slip this in and out. So that's a great option as well. Let's see, what else do I have? Oh, I've got a hanging ceramic planter. So here's another one. And macrame is very, very popular. So you can see I did this kind of for a little backdrop here. This is just a nice ceramic planter, no hole in the bottom. I'm using it as a pot cover, and then I've dropped it into my macrame planter, and then I can drop my plant into it. So it's very easy. When I go to water this, all I gotta do is kind of part that, tilt my pot, take out my plant, and then I can just put it back around. So macrame planters are very, very popular. What's old is new again and coming back, and so those are really, really cool. But you can also buy planters now that have a hanger attached to it that are very decorative and nice looking. This one's also got that kind of plug in the bottom, so I can unplug it and plug it back up. If I want to plant in it, I can. If I were going to plant in this, then I would unplug it, and then I would take it to the sink, water it really, really well, and then let it dry out, and then go back and hang it up. Just want to show you all these different styles. Another metal planter is this one. It's got feet to it, so I can take these little feet out, separate them out, and then I've got this cool modern looking planter. I know you can't quite see the table, but that's a cool looking pot. You can also switch it over and have your planter like this. So you got lots and lots of different options with this one. This is a cool little planter, but you're gonna see a lot of planters these days with feet on them because it's kind of cool to elevate your plant, whether it's built in like this or it's separated like that. So lots and lots of planters now that have feet on them. Oh, I almost forgot this guy. Bonsai pots, right? So bonsai pots are almost, you might find some plastic bonsai pots out there, but this is a ceramic planter. Bonsai is designed, almost all of them have a saucer with them. This one's got a little cardboard to protect it, but then you're gonna find it like that. Now bonsai pots, almost all of them, have 2 drain holes. Why do they have 2 drain holes? Because you're typically wiring your bonsai, right, with a copper wire. So this, you can actually get some copper wire, run it through the hole so it's nice and tight. Then you plant your plant, and then you can use that copper wire to help direct your plant. So really cool, just another option. And I've seen people plant succulents in these, you know, other smaller plants, making a little dish garden. So it doesn't have to just be used for bonsais, but we do carry bonsai pots as well. What else do I have? Oh, this one's kind of cool. So this is a birch bark. So basically they took this birch bark, wrapped it around this plastic pot. They've used a wire frame. All of these things you wouldn't want to plant in, right? Which is why the plastic liner comes in handy. So again, this is just a pot cover, a decorative pot cover that you can drop into. Just again, kind of trying to show you all these different styles. Window boxes or railing planters also come. A lot of times you're gonna find these in plastic. Now this is designed with a railing adjustable kind of clip here. So you can just clip this on there and then you can adjust it actually. So it's got different settings, different holes. So you can adjust the size so it can fit any size railing that you want. So this is a great option as well. Again, just kind of trying to show you all the different options out there. So plastic window boxes or railing planters are another option. Let's see, did I get everything? I think that's pretty much it. Oh, I wanted to show this one too, because I love this bowl. But I wanted to show because it's very rustic looking. This is a very, very heavy duty container. So ceramic pots, like this one, I'm showing, I've showed you this one a couple times. It's going to be smooth on the inside, right? So it's got that kind of smooth texture on the inside. That means that it's been fired once with as a clay product. So it's fired as a clay pot, and then it's put the ceramic glaze on top, and then it's fired again. Well, this container is glazed, but it's usually fired twice. And what that does is makes it super, super durable. Now, what it also does is make this very, very rough on the inside. But I've had pots like this that have lasted many, many years. Never had an issue with them. I've actually had these. I had my first plant in one of these big pots like this. It's kind of what we call like a rustic series, a rustic style container. These last years and years and years. I've had one that my first plant went into. So I bought my first Japanese maple. It was the first plant I bought 17 years ago. I planted it in this planter about 2 years after that. Very rough on the inside, but mine, I mean, my Japanese maple, I just planted it last year. It's been in the container for 15, 16 years. And that thing blew over every once in a while. We have heavy rainstorms or I let it dry out too much. But that plant would fall over. Never lost this pot. It is super, super durable. They're very heavy though. You're gonna feel the weight. It's a thick pot, but if you're looking for something super, super durable, that's a good option too. Just to look at your ceramic pot. If it's really, really light, soft on the inside, very durable, just been fired. It's been fired twice, light the first time, hard the second time. But then something like that one, that rustic planter, has been fired twice at a very high temperature, and that makes it very, very durable. Also, sometimes on ceramic planters, you'll find a little frost-resistant tag on it, and that means that it's been fired twice to allow it to kind of really seal up and therefore be a little bit stronger. But pretty much all ceramic pots I find do very, very well outside. All right, what else do I want to do? Oh, I wanted to show you a couple more things in the plastic line that I find to be cool. You can get hanging baskets too. So I've had lots of customers come in and say, I love this container, but I wanted a green pot. I don't want a white pot. Well, we sell white and green hanging baskets. I grabbed a white one, of course, but they come with hangers, and so you can plant your own hanging basket. Maybe you find a combination, you can't find a combination you like, but you want to plant your own hanging basket. We carry plastic hanging baskets, just your basic plastic hanging basket, $4.99. You get the hook with it, super, super easy. Lots of different styles, usually come in white and green, so another good option. Maybe you want to grow a tomato in a hanging basket. Maybe you live in an apartment complex and you don't have a yard to plant a tomato in, or a strawberry garden. Hanging baskets are a great option. Let's see, Deborah said, would you please consider doing a bonsai plant session on how to create one? Sure, that's a great option. We'll definitely plan on doing that in the future. That's a very, very good one. There's a lot of specific things out there that we can certainly talk about. There's endless possibilities for these webinars, so we love the suggestions. Thanks. Debbie said, I have a bowl similar to that. What can I plant in it since it's so shallow? Great, great question. What to plant in a bowl like this? Well, it depends. You can plant flowers in it and be perfectly fine. This has a bigger root system than this containers allow, but what you can do is get like the little annual packs right now. You can do a bowl of lots of different colors in it. You can plant herbs a lot of times in bowls, do very, very well. Also, I love, if you want something a little bit longer living, we carry these little tiny collectible conifers. They make a cool looking little garden. So you can make kind of like a miniature garden. You can do a fairy garden inside. There's lots and lots of uses. What you want to do basically, Debbie, is buy smaller plants initially. So buy smaller plants with a smaller root system, and then also know how big are those plants going to get. I wouldn't buy a little palm that can eventually become this. I would buy some smaller miniature plants. And then, of course, succulents would be a great option, but also you might have to plan on repositioning them, taking some plants out as they get bigger and putting them in other ones. But I love those little collectible conifers. So Debbie, if you're looking for something outside to grow in a bowl like this, I think that would be a great option. All right. So Cher said, never heard of pot feet. Laugh out loud, but now I'm on the prowl for them. Yep. So pot feet are a great option. And sometimes you can get even ceramic ones. I think this was the only style I saw that we had right now, was just the terracotta clay ones. But pot feet are a great option to kind of get those pots up. I also wanted to show this because I know a lot of people have been asking them for years. This is a hanging basket drip pan. So a lot of people, especially indoor plants, are very, very popular right now. And so you're looking for some way to contain the water in your hanging basket that you have hanging around your home. You want to be able to water it while it's hanging. This is a great option. So this just clips onto the edge of the container. Let me take this off so you can see it, because it is clear plastic, but it's basically got these little clips. You clip it onto the edge of the hanging basket, and it's a saucer that hangs right there with the basket. Now, a lot of hanging baskets have a built-in saucer, like this guy right here. Let's see if I can take this off. So you can see this actually has a saucer attached to it. It just clips right into it, but you can't see the water. So yes, I could water this while it's hanging and protect anything that's underneath it. However, you got to be very, very careful about how you water it. I still say always take your plants down and go pop them into the sink. Water them really well so you don't have spilling water all over your home. And pretty much all of your annual hanging baskets are going to have that as well, even though you're probably growing these outside. All right, so let's see. I think I pretty much covered everything with all the different types of containers. So many different styles, so many different choices. Let me take a quick minute, because I know I've gone on and talked for a while, and I know this isn't the most exciting topic in the world, but it's good to know all the different types of uses for the containers. But I did want to take an option, or take just a couple minutes to talk about grouping containers, and then I'll plant one up real quick for you. So ceramics are really, really cool. Lots of different options. You're not going to quite be able to see all of this, but I want to show you how you can pair things. So this is a really cool one I found out there. It's got red, white, and blue stripes all throughout it. So, think of like Memorial Day coming up. This is a great option. I can take and plant this red mandevilla in it. These just came in. The tropics are here. So I just want to show you kind of the design aspect of it. So I know you can't quite see the red stripe on this, but there's a red stripe on it. In fact, let's do this. Let's position it over here so you can see it all. Get all of these guys moved out of the way. And I just want to talk about the design portion of using containers. So there we go. Now you can see it. I'll move some of these other things out of the way now. So there I've got my mandevilla. I'm actually going to take my hanging basket, my macrame hanger down as well, so you can really see that. All right, so we've got this great looking container, and I'm going to do a whole red, white, and blue look. So I've got my red, white, and blue striped pot, and then I can add to it, let's see, did I have, I'm going to add this red pot here that I found that's really cool looking. This one's got those kind of dots on it that are really cool. So I've got this red pot with these dots. Maybe I've had this one in the past and I found this pot and I love it. I put in a catmint, which is kind of a blue colored flower. So you can kind of see what I'm doing here. So I can pair that with it. So I've got my red that pulls out the red there, the red that's pulled out of the red flower. And then, let's see if I can find my other one. I've got a blue pot. We've carried blue pots for years. It's one of my favorite colors to use in the garden and the landscape and around the home. But this is a really nice blue planter. And then I found this really awesome Dusty Miller. This is that Senecio Dusty Miller, Senecio. And it's a really cool looking Dusty Miller. A little bit more expensive than a normal Dusty Miller, but it's really, really different and unusual with that leaf color. But instead of a white flower, I wanted to use a white foliage. And this kind of gives that silvery and white foliage. So I can pair this with that. I don't know if you can quite see that. Yep. So now I've got my blue flower in my red pot. I've got a white in a blue pot. And I've got my blue and white and red pot with a red flower. So I've got all this red, white, and blue going on. This is a great way to kind of design a combination of different types of colors of containers with different plants in it. So same kind of concept that we'll use when we plant up a container. Another option is to pair different sizes of containers. And I love terracotta. If I just put something like ferns in these, that would be really cool, or boxwoods would be a good option. But here's that bell shape. I'm not going to be able to hold them all up so you can see them all, but I've got a large, a medium, and a small. So I can take and put these down my steps on my front porch and put different size plants in them. I can do combinations of plants if I want to. I can grow herbs in them. I can grow vegetables. You can make it look really cool even with a tomato in here. Put a little tomato cage in it. Then I can put a pepper plant in this size, and then I can put a little basil in it. And I've got my vegetable garden right there with different sizes. So really cool option is using the same style pot, but just different sizes. And it creates that tier effect. It's really awesome to be able to group them. Same idea here. Large, medium, small planter. And you can kind of group them. You can see all the different sizes. You can do the same with the exact same style pot as well. All right. So that's kind of a little design. Just a little design on your pots. Another design aspect is use the same ones. So here I've got my, I think it's called Bahama Breeze or Beachside Drive. Beachside Drive mix. I love this mix. It's got this pink Scavola. It's got the honey petunia, which is really cool. And then it's got this really awesome million bells. Let's see if I can find the names of all the plants. So it's Tropical Sunrise, which is the million bell, the super bell from Proven Winners. Then it's got the Supertunia, which is a petunia, honey, which is kind of this really pretty, it's yellow. It's really a yellow. You might be able to see it better on this one. I'll show you in a second. But it's really a yellow bloom, and then it fades to this really kind of cool peachy color. And then I love the pink Scavola, and that's called Whirlwind Pink Scavola. You can see it right here. Scavola is a super hardcore plant. I just love this mix. So this is a hanging basket that we sell right here. It's already done for you. So if you're looking for ease, maybe you're going to flower bomb mom, this is a great option. You can hang this on her front porch or your front porch, and then you can buy this big combination planter already. This is already done. It's in a plastic pot. You can use it just in this plastic pot. It's a slightly decorative plastic pot, nice. Or you can slip it in to a ceramic pot, and there you go. You got your matching containers, one on the porch or patio or steps, and then one hanging above. So you can do a whole combination there and keep them all the same plants with different planters, different looks and different heights. So another great option. All right, last thing I'm going to do before I say goodbye is I'm going to plant one up. So I've got to pick a planter. That's the hard part. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it in the terracotta, I think. So I'm going to use this terracotta bowl right here. And we always want to use potting soil. So remember when I was talking about the soil, I'm going to get to it. Here we go. Potting soil is designed for pots. So whenever you do anything in a container, you always want to use potting soil. You don't want to use garden soil. Garden soil is designed to go in the garden, not in a container. Potting soil is designed with usually peat, composted bark material, which is what the base of all of our soils are, is a composted bark. So, you know, we're cutting down trees to use for lumber, and then we use the byproducts for mulch, and a mulch that is broken down a fair amount is used in potting soils. So potting soils are used with a composted bark matter and leaf matter. And then so that's your compost basically. So it's a compost, a peat moss, vermiculite, and perlite. Perlite are those little white styrofoamy things you see in potting soils. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this bag here. This is our natural and organic potting soil, McDonald garden soil. So this is a really, really good potting soil. Whenever you look at a potting soil, it's going to be it should be really, really rich looking and consistent looking as well. So you're going to see a lot of that bark. So you're going to have some chunks in there, but you're also going to see that white little perlite, which is great, helps break it up. A little bit of peat in there. So it's a really, really good option. Now, before I put soil in here, I could put some of my broken pieces of terracotta in there, my old ceramic pots that are maybe broken. I could put a little piece of weed fabric over the hole. This is a fairly good sized drainage hole, right? So you can see that big drainage hole. So yeah, I might have an issue with soil coming out of that. Now, potting soil is designed to not get too thick. So by putting a potting soil right directly on the drainage hole, you're gonna be perfectly fine. But some people will put like a coffee filter over the hole, or a piece of weed fabric, or just a layer of rock if they're looking to add some weight. I don't have any of those really, really handy right now, so I'm just gonna use potting soil right in the bottom. So the first thing, of course, is we're gonna fill this up with a little bit of potting soil. And there's lots and lots of different types of potting soil out there. We love ours. We have professionally designed this for this area. So you're using a professional growing media. You know, there's lots and lots of different types out there. I love ours. We carry a natural and organic and an all-purpose. The only difference is the wetting agent, basically. In a natural and organic potting soil, you're going to get a organic wetting agent, whereas an all-purpose, it's a synthetic wetting agent. And a synthetic wetting agent just means that it's man-made. And what I find is the all-purpose tends to dry out a little bit better, which is good if you're using it for indoor containers or indoor plants. But also different types of plants. Like let's say I was growing a lavender or a rosemary in a container. And then I would probably personally recommend the all-purpose. The natural and organic tends to stay moist a little bit longer, which is great when you're growing plants outside because we have wind and evaporation, all those different things. So I'm going to fill this up to about the layer of where my first plant is going in. Now, how do we choose plants to grow in a container, to go into a container? Well, there's lots and lots of different things that you can put together. I'm going to show you a very simple design here, a very easy one. And it's using the simple recipe of a spiller, thriller, and filler. So I always go to my thriller first, my upright plant. That's what a thriller is. It's going to be upright, it's going to be big, it's going to be something that's going to stand out, add some height, some verticality to your planter. So think thriller is your taller plant. And that's typically the first thing I'm going to pick out because everything's going to come after that. You know, you don't want to go and you say, well, I love this spiller, now what do I match with it? You can do it that way, but I always typically, personally, start with a thriller, something upright. And this is called a cordyline, I believe. This is a cordyline. Let's make sure I say that right before. It's actually a phormium, sorry. So a phormium, very similar to cordyline, but it's this purple kind of spiky plant. This one's called Purple Mountain. So phormium, I don't know if you can see that, but it's P-H-O-R-M-I-U-M, phormium. Really, really cool. I love my burgundy spiky plants. They're just one of my favorites. But I'm going to take this out of the container. So I filled up my pot to about the level that I need to be at. Look at that root system. That's a good, healthy looking root system right there. It's awesome. Really strong, durable plant. So this is what I'm going to put in. Now these are all annuals. These are all going to, you know, go when we have a hard frost. Phormium, I believe, can take it to about 20 degrees. Yeah, so hardy to 20 degrees. So we didn't really even get that cold this winter. I have a cordyline, red spike cordyline, that I've been growing for years in a container. I never move it from my front porch. It's awesome. Mine actually tends to droop a little bit more, but there's lots and lots of different styles out there. But this one's really cool. So I grabbed this. I'm going to put this in the back. Now, I think a lot of us, when we make containers, we tend to put our thriller right in the center, and then we do a spiller-filler combination on the outside. And that's perfectly fine. I tend to find that my containers are really viewed from one side. So I'm usually using them on my front porch, along the front of my house. Even out in the garden, I'm looking at them from a certain angle a majority of the time. Very rarely am I looking at a container 360. So I like to push myself, at least, to put my thriller in the back of the container. So I'm gonna put this back here in the back. I'm gonna use my empty plastic pot that I love to keep, that I just emptied out to use as my soil scoop. We're gonna fill this back up. Now, what I would normally do, I don't know that I have any right here. I got some over there, so I'll put it on afterwards. I'll go back and finish this up, is my Biotone Starter. Biotone Starter fertilizer is an awesome fertilizer. It's a great way to start your plants off on the right foot. It has all these beneficial bacteria and mycorrhizas. I'll grab it here at the end and I'll show you what it looks like. But it's made by Espoma. It's my #1 thing to put. You want to get it directly around the root system of your plants. That's the only way to make it really work effectively, is get it right there around the root system. But this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put these here. Now, I always try and force myself to be a little asymmetrical if I can. If you get symmetrical, it's hard to stay symmetrical. If something happens, let's say, so I'm going to be using, I'll tell you what plants I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using this Diamond Frost Euphorbia, which I absolutely love, and this combination of petunias from Proven Winners. It's called Above and Beyond, or I think that's right. Let me make sure I say the name right, because this is my favorite mix. Yeah, Above and Beyond. So it's an Above and Beyond mix. It's got 3 different types of petunias in it. Bubblegum, which is my favorite. It's got a fuchsia in it, I believe. So it's bubblegum, silverberry, and fuchsia. So yeah, the fuchsia's right here. The silverberry's in there. It's not blooming quite yet, but it's a little bit on the wider side, but then it's got this maroon kind of striping in it. Very, very light, very unnoticeable almost. But when you pair it with something burgundy, it really pulls it out. So I'm going to be using that. So what I typically would do, an easy fix would be put this in the front, put my 2 Diamond Frost on the side. But I'm going to try and force myself to be a little asymmetrical here. So what I'm going to do, let me move this soil down here. So I'm going to take this combination. Now this has 3 different types of petunias. This thing's going to be awesome. I love these. These are really, really cool from Proven Winners. It's a 6-inch container, but it's got 3 different types of petunias in it. Really, really awesome. So we're going to gently take that out. Then we're going to loosen up the root system a little bit. And then I'm going to put this off to one side. So I'm going to make sure that I'm not being super symmetrical. And I'm going to push it off to one side. And what is this? This is my spiller. Petunias tend to spill over the sides of containers. Now, it also can act as a filler. Supertunias from Proven Winners actually tend to kind of bulk up and also spill. So it's going to really act as both. But I'm really going to use this here as my spiller. I'm going to put it on one side. Then I'm going to take my Diamond Frost, and I'm going to push myself to fill this up. One, to make it look really cool for you, but also to fill up this container and make it really, really nice and full. So this is my Diamond Frost Euphorbia. This is one of my favorite plants to use in containers. There's Snow Mound and Diamond Frost, but Diamond Frost is my favorite because it tends to kind of go in and out of plants. It'll pop in and out all over the place. It can spill a little bit, but most of the time it's more of a filler. But this is going to end up throughout the petunia, throughout this formium, and really fill out this container and add a lot of white, kind of billowing, kind of cloud-like blooms on it all summer long. It's very, very drought tolerant, very easy to grow. If you've ever used this, you know it's one of the best plants out there. So I've got my 2. I'm going to put 2 in here, not because I have to. I probably could have been fine with just 1, but I'm going to put 2 in here just to really make it nice and full, and I want instant gratification. I personally don't mind putting a little bit more plant material in there. I mean, if I were going to grow a Japanese maple in here, I'd put it in a slightly bigger pot. I'd keep it outside. I'd never touch it. Maybe I'd add a little ground cover to it if I wanted to. But it's an annual container. It's only going to be, until November? So it's April, so I've got, 6 to 7 months out of this. So I want it full. I want it impactful from the beginning, and that's perfectly fine, I think, to put those plants in there. Now, if you want to let it really grow out and let it become okay with itself, and that's fine. But I can let this kind of just be nice and full right from the get-go. And it might get a little crazy looking on me in about the 3 to 4 month time frame. But hey, I've got a party going on this weekend, and I want to make sure it's got a really, really nice look right from the get-go. And so I think it's okay to put a little bit more plants in there. I think it's a great idea and it gives you that instant gratification. So there you go. There's a very simple, easy, low maintenance container. I would add my Biotone Starter into the soil if I had it. I'll show it to you when I finish up this webinar for anybody that wants to stick around and see it. Biotone Starter is awesome. What I would do is come back a couple weeks later and add my green leaf. This is our green leaf fertilizer. It's got all the micronutrients and all the best stuff in it. It's got your macro and your micro in it, so it feeds the all-purpose but it also feeds the smaller things too, like boron and copper and zinc. It's a great all-purpose formula. I use it for all my flowers. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I can put a couple tablespoons in there when once I let that biotone starter get going, and then it's gonna just produce. And what I love about this low maintenance container is the petunias, you really don't have to deadhead or do anything. The blooms are gonna fall off. Every once in a while I might go to this petunia and cut it back a little bit to let it refurbish. The cordyline, or the phormium, the phormium really aren't gonna have to do much to. You might get a brown leaf here and there, so I just pull those out, cut them out. And the diamond frost euphorbia is low maintenance as well. It's just gonna keep on blooming and billowing out. So a great option there. I could plant this in a plastic pot. So I could plant this in a plastic pot. I could slip it into another container. Those are great options too as a drop-in. Really, lots and lots of versatility. Think about your planters. So that'll be my final advice to you, is think about all the different types of plants that you want to grow. I usually start with the plants I want to grow. If I want a palm, let's say I want to grow this palm outside. Now I can't grow it year-round, but I want to grow it in a container. I want to put it in a container for that tropical look on my front porch. Think about that. It's going to be tall. So I'm going to need a little bit of a heavier pot. So I'm probably going to go ceramic with this one. If I'm going to grow a tomato, and I don't want to invest a lot of money, I want to get a lot of tomatoes, but I don't want to invest a lot of money, maybe I'll get just a plastic pot. If I want that garden-y look, if I want that kind of garden herb vegetable look, I might go with this, with a terracotta clay pot. There's so many different types of pots. Think about the look that you're trying to achieve. Think about the size that your plant's going to get, so you know if you need something heavier or lighter. Am I going to be moving it inside? Am I going to be taking it outside? Think about all the different things that you might be doing with that plant. And the plant is typically going to tell you what type of pot to get. And then, of course, you can match it to any type of decor. So I hope that helped. I hope that helped you kind of get some ideas of grouping. So different ways that we can group containers to kind of pull off a look. Think about the different types of plants you're using, the different types of materials that containers come in. There's so many different types, whether it's terracotta, ceramic, plastic, concrete, coco liners, so many different options, and we carry a majority of them here at McDonald Garden Center. So if you need to come in and get a new container, I suggest coming in soon. We've got a great collection right now. We hope to see you soon. I'm going to grab that biotone real quick to show you that. Here's my go-to biotone starter. Don't knock over my pots. So biotone starter from Espoma, awesome starter fertilizer. It's got beneficial bacteria, mycorrhizae. Get those right to the root system. You're going to see the results very quickly from your plants throughout the season. They've done lots of tests where they use this in one container and not in another container, and you will see the results. The plants just get bigger. Forms a symbiotic relationship that lasts the entirety of the life of the plant. So all I got to do is add some biotone to this, get some soil into my holes here, fill this up, and I'm going to take this guy home and have a great, gorgeous container that's low maintenance all summer. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it. Lots and lots of different styles. Hopefully you can come in, pick out some pots soon, and we'll see you hopefully soon. Enjoy the weather out there, enjoy the gardening, and we'll see you next week.